Great. So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Gardner. I am a customer success manager here at ActivePipe. And today I have the joy of talking to you all about how we can utilize personalization to really make your emails in ActivePipe stand out. So that's the topic for today's little training session. So I have 4 tips for you, and I'll show you an example that I've built out. Per usual, if you have questions, please pop them into the Q&A and or the chat. Q&A is preferred, but either one works. And I will try to answer those questions as I go, but I'll also leave a few minutes towards the end of our session to go through any questions as well. All right. So, like I said, today's topic is personalization and how you can leverage it to stand out from the crowd. And I'm actually really excited to talk about this because I think it's actually surprisingly underutilized. So I'm hoping this will kind of give you all some insider tips that is going to help you stand out from everyone else's email marketing, right? Because that's the goal, is we want to be sure that what we're doing is standing out from the crowd these days, right? So, like I said, I have 4 tips. So I'll go ahead and just list those out, and then we'll kind of dive into each examples of each of those. So the first tip is make sure you're including a custom greeting in your emails by utilizing our placeholders. Second is all emails, including even things like your recent listings, and make sure that you're including a brief message at the top of those emails. It doesn't have to be anything lengthy, but make sure you're including a brief message at the top of those, even those basic property emails. This third tip is including personal updates, and we'll dive into what that actually means in a moment. And then the fourth tip is include your real success stories. All right, so going back to the top here, include a custom greeting in your email. This one is pretty straightforward, and we've talked about it before, but again, it's really underutilized. So this is as simple as just addressing your letters to your recipients. So by including their first name, or if you have a custom field, that's a salutation custom field. Either one works, but it's a great eye catcher. And the whole idea is that first we have to catch their eye, and you're going to do that by a snappy subject line. And this will also help catch their eye, is if their first name is directly at the top of the email. So we're utilizing a placeholder here. And if you're new to using placeholders, I'll show you what you do to add one. So you just type your greeting in, and then up top here in our toolbar, this last option drop down of placeholder is what you want to use. And you want to make use of under the contact section, because this is a field within the contact profile. You would want to choose first name. So that one's pretty straightforward, but again, it's underutilized. And the thing here, really to remember, especially with this one and the second tip, is that these are very straightforward, quick things, quick additions that you can make to your email, but they're going to be what makes you look different than just the services like Zillow or like Redfin that, as we all know, are sending plenty of emails to your contacts, right? But their emails are going to be very general. They're not going to be personalized. They're not going to have these messages at the top or be personalized to the contact's name. So it's, again, the idea here is that you are being a real human being that another human being can connect with, and that you will stand out against those services, right? So the second tip was include a brief message at the top of your emails. So that's what I've done here. As you can see, nothing extraordinary, and it doesn't have to be. I have like maybe 3 or 4 sentences here, and that is what I would recommend. It doesn't have to be lengthy, but again, you're starting to build that connection even in your emails before you can even pick up a phone call. And that's what this whole personalization idea is, right? Is that the more we can demonstrate that we are a unique human being and not just a robot behind a screen, the better. So that's our brief message here. You're also welcome to take screenshots of anything I show today because all of this um, is completely made up. So if you like any of the copy, feel free to take a screenshot. All right. Now, the third and fourth tips are much more lengthy in what we can talk about. So that third tip was include a personal update in your newsletters. Let's see, where'd my mouse go? There it is. Okay. So the third tip was include a personal update in your newsletters. And now here's the thing that I would challenge you to think on for this is that a personal update can actually be kind of two different things. So it can be a personal update about what's going on in your business, and it can also be a personal update about what's going on in your life. And so that's what I've done here in my example. So I'll kind of walk you through what I've done here. So in my version of giving a personal update about what's going on in work life. So I'm demonstrating what I have done. In this particular example, this is clearly a newsletter. So I'm focusing on what I've done in the past month in my business, right? So how many buyers did you represent last month? Or if you do it quarterly, how many buyers did you represent last quarter? Or did you have a particular property that was really unique and a challenge, but you've got it sold for your sellers? And or was it a record time? Or basically, what were your achievements? What are you most proud of in the past month? Share it. Why not? It's a good way, again, to begin building that trust, building that rapport with your clients before you even make a phone call. If they're just learning about you and learning about what you do and your expertise from your emails at first, this is a great way to do it. So in my example here, I've written a brief little message that might connect. If I have my own blog, I might connect there. Then you'll see I just included a couple of quick stats here, hypothetical stats. The question I get asked often on these webinars is, oh, I didn't know you could include GIFs. How can you include GIFs? These are both little just GIFs icons. And so you can include GIFs just like you do images. So if you've ever uploaded an image in ActivePipe, you click the little blue camera, and then you just make use of our upload image button, and then you choose your file. So as long as it's saved on your computer as a .gif, you will be able to upload it. And then it just goes right into your email and it's animated. So that's kind of a fun tip. If you're curious, a great program that you can do quick little GIFs like this is canva.com, canva.com. Fairly user-friendly, and you can make all sorts of things. So just a little tip there. And then this section kind of goes into tip number 4, but it's still kind of included in tip number 3. So tip number 4 was include real success stories. And at this point, I'm sure all of you are very familiar with testimonials, and we see a good amount of testimonials, and those look something like this, right? It's basically your client gave you a little snippet review, and then you can include that in your email about it, again, building that trust, right? Demonstrating your success. And I love testimonials, and I think they're 100% great. Include them. What I've also begun seeing more often, and what I as like consumer side of my brain, I love to see are things like this where we have success stories. So this actually, instead of soliciting a written format testimonial from your client, for something like this, you would just basically seek approval from them. Hey, would it be okay if I shared your story? Something like that. And then you can give them a little well wish in your newsletter. So pretty simple here. You're just congratulating them. You're telling a little bit about how you helped them, about their process, whether it was on the buying or selling side. I think you could do it on both ends. But again, we're humanizing the process. So we're demonstrating, again, that we're making connections and building relationships. Again, those are things that services like Zillow is not going to be able to do. So I think this is a really great tool, and I think it's you're not just telling your prospective clients like, yes, I work with this many people and I've had this many successes, but you're putting a face to the story and a face to the success, which is much more easy to connect with and begin to build that relationship with. So I would definitely recommend trying out some success stories, or well wishes, as you might call them as well. Another great, very simple, this one is probably the simplest to achieve as far as your little personal updates, but it's actually pretty cool. And so I've been seeing this more often too, is including, like, specifically if you have a unique property or a special property, or one that you think other people will just enjoy, like, learning about, this would be great to include in a newsletter as well. So you've seen that instead of saying something like feature property, right? That tends to be a pretty standard header. Instead of the header of featured property, I'm personalizing. I'm saying my favorite current property, right? And so then I recently saw one that was something like Bon Jovi's old home. If that were the case, you could tell the little story and the little background of that property here. Let me see. Let me check my chat and my Q&A. Oh, someone was asking, are there any like standardized templates that kind of already follow this format? That question is a little bit tricky because everyone does have a little bit different templates in your accounts. So you may have a template in your account that might be called something like newsletter. If you do, then that format is probably fairly close to this. If you don't, you could certainly reach out to our support team and request a newsletter style template, and they could send you something. But I can also just talk you through the modules that I've added here to achieve what this looks like. So I'll do that at the end. All right. So my favorite current property, I think that's super fun, especially if you have any unique properties, or even land can have good stories sometimes too. But the idea here is that you're not just, popping in a property at random, but you're choosing one that has really caught your eye, and then you're talking about maybe why it did. All right, so we've talked about a work life personal update, right? But I said that you could also do a life personal update, right? And so I kind of have an example down here to give you an idea what I mean by that. And I have labeled these under working local and living local because I think that's kind of a catchy little title, but you could certainly divide it however you may want. So an example of a live personal update. And again, some people might say, well, this is a business email. I'm trying to solicit business, but I think real estate professionals live in a very unique position where you're not just trying to demonstrate that you are the expert real estate agent, but most of the time you're also trying to demonstrate that you are the local expert wherever you may be stationed out of, right? You want to demonstrate that, not only are you know everything there is to know about the buying and selling process, but you also want to demonstrate that you know the area, and so that they can trust you with this major life decision, right? So I think personal life updates are also great to include. And so not only is it building your side of being the local expert, but you're again building that connection, building that relationship, really deepening that relationship, just through an email, which is going to help you in the long run. If people feel that you're approachable, they're going to be much more inclined to pick up the phone and call you than the person who they really know nothing about. They don't know if they're friendly. They don't know if that person is approachable. They're going to call the approachable person first, right? So this is a quick little way you could do something like that. So I've included two little sections here, one about maybe something that you've recently tried out in the local area. Pro tip here is, if nothing else, food. Everyone always loves food. So if you've tried a recent local restaurant that just opened, that's a great one. I've also seen, like, during February, I saw someone do like favorite local bakeries to get your Valentine's Day cookies from, something like that. People love food, so it's always a good default. I've included something about like a recent park, and then related, this one actually kind of helps go back to real estate too. So it might be a personal update, but again, looping it back into real estate, right? So this particular example is talking about how we're still doing online schooling, right? But maybe you can help your clients who may also be in a similar situation to you, right? Similar life situation. And if you can talk to them about school district info while they're in the buying process. So just kind of two little ideas there. I've seen folks do, here's where I've recently vacationed. That's super fun, obviously. Again, the idea is that you're just connecting and humanizing yourself and making yourself approachable. So that's kind of the idea. And then we talked about testimonial, which falls back into that tip number 4, which was include real success stories. So those are the 4 tips with the examples. And so I'll kind of talk you through now how I actually logistically built this email, since we got the question about the template. So this first section is just a 1 column. If you're relatively new to ActivePipe, everything on the right of the email editor functions on a drag and drop system, if you haven't already figured that out. And so just drop that 1 column in. This section is a 1 image, 1 text panel. Now, you may be wondering, well, we've got some here that have an image on the right, and we've got some here that have an image on the left. If you've never played around with that, you certainly can. So you'll notice that the default is going to be, when you drag that in there, the default is that the image is on the left, but you certainly can flip-flop it. And you can do so in the settings button. So if you go into the settings, the arrangement section is what you want to pay attention to. It's the very first drop down. So here's where you can flip it if you so desire. Now this one also has a little addition because we've added a button. So this is the same panel. So this is still the 1 image, 1 text panel, but in this one we've added a button. So if you have never added a button, you can do so by, I just put a little enter in there. And then the center icon in our toolbar that looks like a little rectangle with a mouse icon or a clicker icon. If you click on that, this is how you can add a button. Now, our button pop-up here has changed recently. So if this looks slightly different from what you're used to, if you've been with us for a little while, you are not wrong. This is slightly new. So I'll show you what we got going on here. So first, obviously, you set your button text, which is what the button says. And then you choose link type, which web address is what we all know and love, right? This is pretty standard. This would be if you have a URL and you want that button to link to our URL, just simple as that. But now we also have a couple of options actually for our buttons, that if you wanted to have something else happen when they click that button, you can. So a couple that I'll point out here. So first, telephone. If you want them to be able to call you from clicking on a button, you can now just use the link type of telephone and start typing your phone number in here, right? And then as soon as they click on that button, it's going to call them. So if they're reading the email on their phone, it'll dial you right up. If they are reading this email from their computer, If they have a dialer on their computer, it will open that dialer. If not, it'll prompt them. Normally it'll say like, do you want to send this to your phone to call or something like that? Depends on what browser they're using, but that's kind of the idea behind that. And then I'll also show you email because you may have in the past come to a webinar and you learned the little trick potentially where you had to use to type in mail to colon and then your email address, right? This is some level 2 things. But you might have in the past been told that, but now we're making your life a little bit easier, or at least I hope you find it a little bit easier. And you can just use email address and then you type your email in here. You can set a subject line and you can even start the email for them if you wanted to. So when someone clicks this button, it's going to open up an email directly on their device that's already addressed to you. You could have it already set with a particular subject line if you wanted. And then you could also even start the message for them as well. So a great addition here. So that's how you can add a button to your section. Then for this little fun piece, all I've done is used a 2-image panel followed by a 2-column panel. Another trick I'll show you, kind of in this vein of doing newsletters, is in settings, you have this option of padding. And so by default, most of the time, things are going to be set to 20% or 20 points. And you'll see that adds quite a bit of space between the two. So if you ever want to have a little bit less space, you can kind of get rid of that with padding. Quick tip there. All right. Then I've just followed this by a 1-column and 2-image and 2-column. Now, this is another question I've gotten before is what's going on here? How do we have 2 different fonts in a one text block? You can totally do that. So all you have to do is highlight the bit that you want to change and then change your text up here. So this will be the default, right? Is that everything will be the same, but you can kind of start to play around with that and have a bit of fun with how you want to change your font. And it can be within the same panel. So you can have multiple fonts per one panel. Then I have just another 1-column, and then I actually have used a property panel for this. So you could kind of do a manual property if you ever needed to, if it was off market or something like that. But I've just used our standard ActivePipe property panel. So that would be this bad boy over here in the property section under feature. So I'll drop one in to show you what it looks like when you first add it. Just looks like that. And then we click our icon in the bottom right-hand corner, and this is where you would select your property. All right. Good question in the chat. Okay, I got one that asked, what's the difference between 1-column versus heading? To be honest, if you kind of do it like me, there's not a lot of a difference. Very rarely will there be a difference. Sometimes there will be for some folks, but a lot of times there isn't. But so I'll show you. So headings are very much structured by default to look like a heading, right? This looks like a heading by default. It's in my font heading 1 and it's nice and centered. So it's very, by default, it looks and is formatted like a heading versus a 1-column. The default is going to look a little bit more of like paragraph. However, you can change these. So if you were to reformat this, oops, well, that still works. If you were to reformat this, you could basically flip-flop what I've done, right? So it's just by how the default settings are. Heading is going to default to look like a heading, and a 1-column is going to default to look like a paragraph. That's really, but you could edit them to kind of change them as needed. So it's just basically how they start is the difference. All right. Oh, another great question about formatting stuff. Okay, so how do you change the background color on your sections? That is also going to be in settings. So let me come back down here where I kind of was. Okay, so in this particular header, as you can tell, I have flip-flopped my colors to kind of give my email a little bit more structure. So I have dark background, light font. And so to change the font color first, you're going to highlight the font. And then in our panel, we have this little A with our colors, and that's how you could change the color of your font, right? And then to change the background, we are going to use our settings gear, and we select background color. So most of you will have your brand colors designated down here. And so we make it pretty simple. If you want to stay, within your brand colors, you just select the appropriate one that you went down here, click continue, and there you have it. And that actually is the same across all our panels. So that works for heading, but in this text panel, this one image, one text panel, if I wanted a dark background on this, I can also do that in settings. So that's going to be background color again. So basically just look for background color and you will be able to change that around. All right, perfect. All right, and we talked about adding buttons, so I think we get the point there. And yep, that's pretty straightforward. And you'll see here, I made use of my button that links out to a call there. The one last little thing I'll show you that is related to all these fancy settings and building out something like this is that you can also choose to link images. So if you wanted, for example, like this panel, right? I'm linking them to more information about the park that I went to visit, right? If I wanted to also link that image so that if someone were to click the image, they also get taken to information about the park, you can. So let me grab my link here. So I'm going to take the same link that I have on this button and I'm just going to copy it. And now when I click on this panel, you'll see I have 3 different buttons. So the first button is to choose the image. The second button is to crop if I wanted to crop. And then the third button is hyperlink. And so that's what we would use here. So I have it. There we are. We just add that link in there where we want it to go, click continue. And now if someone were to click this image, it's also going to Walnut Creek info. So another great little tip there. That actually works. I've seen that as a interesting workaround if you're curious, where someone will, this particularly happens with videos. So if you happen to be someone who hosts a video and it's not on YouTube or Vimeo, because as you know, our built-in video panel, right? Our built-in video panel here, when you go to choose video, it has to be on YouTube or Vimeo. And if it's not on YouTube or Vimeo, you might run into trouble, right? You can't add it to your ActivePipe email. Well, a little trick is I've seen plenty of people, especially for like virtual walkthroughs, they might be on a completely different platform. If you just add a image panel in and then you kind of screenshot what looks like the video screen with the little play button in the middle, and then you just hyperlink it to wherever you need them to end up. There you have it. And then you can send them wherever you need. You kind of have a little fake video panel in there. All righty. Well, I think that is the end of my monologue. So let me see if I've gotten any more questions. If you have questions, now is a great time to pop them into the chat. Okay, I'm not saying anything pour in. All right. Well, again, the idea here is just remember, the more you can build that trust, the more you can humanize by personalizing, the more you're going to stand out. So the quick tips are make sure you're doing a personalized address. Make sure you're always including a quick little intro message on all your emails, even the property-based ones. Make sure or include personal updates, both about what's going on in your business and perhaps your life as well. And then include real success stories. So you can give your potential clients an idea of what they might look like in a month if they work with you, right? So that's the idea here, is building that trust, building that connection, all before you even pick up the phone, and making sure that you are approachable. All right, before we go, I will give you a link. Let me hop over into the chat here. Boo, 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 boo. All right, I will put a link in the chat where we have summarized this info into a blog post as well. So if you want a recap to kind of take these tips and apply some of them in the next few of your emails, and you want something to reference back to, we have this version of our webinar in a blog post. So check out that blog post if you need to reference back to it. And then, as per usual, if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us via the help chat in the bottom right-hand corner. Yes, this is a real human being. It's not just a robot. You will talk with our support people, or check out our support site, which is support.activepipe.com. Very helpful resources there. Pop that in the chat as well. Okay. All righty, everyone. Well, I hope this gave you a few ideas for your next emails, and I will see you next week for next week's This Month at ActivePipe. All right. Have a great day, everyone.